Welcome everyone to this webinar from the International Mentoring Community. My name is Dr. Stephen Hobbs and I am the Director of Certification for the International Mentoring Community. And I'll share a little bit more about myself in a few minutes. Also on the call is Doug Lawrence, who's the Director of Education for the International Mentoring Community. And he's monitoring the chat room for us. And he will be asking questions from the audience, or he might even have a question himself at the end of the webinar. I'm going to concentrate on what's called the Mannequin Model. This is a model that I'm going to use to help you as a mentor to describe and explain the mentoring arrangement and relationship from a mentor's perspective. And to be able to do that, I just want to share with you where this idea came from. For many years, I have been an educator, and I keep always looking for very innovative ways in which to engage the learners, whether online or in the room, sometimes on retreat, so it could be on the beach. At one point, I was watching the Oscars, and I made an observation. I went, hang on a minute. People seem to be changing seats in the Oscars, and it clicked. I went, oh, they have to keep the audience in full. So what they do is they hire what are called seat fillers. And what happens is when someone goes up to present or may leave the room, seat fillers come in and sit there. And I went, oh, that's interesting. Now, why would they be doing that? And I was thinking, okay, well, the same thing would apply when you're thinking about mannequins in a showroom or in the front windows of a department store. They're there, in a sense, presenting the clothing or the diorama, the scenery in which they are in, to emphasize some points. So there was a perspective that I was gaining from that angle. And then there was another time when I was watching a show, and what they did was they placed the pictures of the audience that were going to come up to present in the chairs. And I went, why would they be doing that? And then I went, no, what was happening was that the people who were presenting from the stage would want to know who's sitting where in case they wanted to direct a joke. And I went, oh, okay, that makes sense as well. And that just got me ticking over as how might I use mannequins, seat fillers, people like that, this kind of idea. And I came up with, well, what would happen if I created my own mannequins? Now, I could roll mannequins into the room. I could put pictures of people in chairs, roller chairs. Or I thought, what would happen is if I started to use stick people drawings? And then I went, oh, there's got to be a better way than just a stick person drawing. Why don't I fluff out the person a little bit? And I came up with the drawings that you see on the screen now. And they have accompanied me ever since. And I said, well, let's apply this to this mentee-mentor relationship and arrangement and explore what that might look like using a mannequin model. And that's where we are today, as a way to give you insights as a mentor to your perspective of the mentoring arrangement and the mentoring relationship. To do that, I just want to give you just a little bit of background about myself, because I think that will help to position where we're going. So I've been a facilitative mentor for going on about 30 years. So I prefer to call myself a facilitative mentor rather than an instructive coach. That's just a preference for me, because it better describes who I am and how I interact with the people who are asking me questions. The other part of this is that, as I introduced earlier, I'm Director of Certification, and I'm a co-founder of the International Mentoring Community. And we're attempting to bring all things mentoring to the world so that people can be mentors for the world. And that's an exciting adventure that Doug has joined me on, and I appreciate that he's here on the call and helping out with the webinar. And I also am a speaker, author, educator. I've written books, made many presentations at conferences. I've actually served as a professor at a few universities, instructing courses. So I have quite an experience that I draw from, as well as being a manager inside organizations, from a CEO to senior level managers. So I've had a chance to work in different ways with people, and I really do appreciate this facilitative mentoring approach. Obviously, the use of this mannequin model that we're going to go through today. So that's a little bit about me. So let's jump back into where we're going with this webinar. First thing, I just want to talk a little bit more about the mentoring arrangement, then the mentoring relationship. And I'd like to just go over something about the hierarchy of values, because this is something that's a little bit like in behind this mentoring arrangement, mentoring relationship that I just want to share with you. What we're going to do is we're going to start with this mentor you and looking at and explaining a little bit more about when the mentee and mentor meet, there is this consideration of the arrangement and relationship that exists between the two of them. Now, in some ways, this connection can come from a mentoring in the workplace program. It can be mentee reached out and asked the mentor to assist with some business. It could be a youth who has been assigned a mentor in a youth center. So there's lots of ways in which the arrangement and relationship can come together. Of importance here also is that the mentee usually has a direction in which they want to go. And that is sort of their why. And they know about it as sort of like, I call it like a thought bubble here. And then they have to express it in the arrangement relationship elements as we move forward. Now, what becomes important here is that the mentor, from a mentoring arrangement point of view, is accountable for holding that space. Now, I'd just like to repeat that. The mentor, from a mentoring arrangement perspective, is the one that's accountable for holding the space in which this connection, the relationship, the arrangement is actually going to unfold. In time, the mentee can start to take on some of that accountability, but at the beginning, it rests with the mentor. Which, conversely, is kind of interesting, is that the mentee coming into this connection with the mentor holds that connection space. Because the mentee is attempting to say, okay, this is the kind of relationship I'd like to have with you, rather than the mentor putting something on top of, or we talk about power over. It's more about the mentee is saying, okay, I'd like to have the relationship and I'd like to have it this way. This is how I'd like to connect. And then what the mentor does is says, okay, we'll arrange it so that it unfolds this way. So the two of them, in a sense, are doing this relationship arrangement dance, and each one has their accountabilities. Now, what's of interest here to the mentor and the mentee together in forming this relationship and this arrangement is what's called the hierarchy of values. And one of the people that I turn to when I want to understand more about this is Dr. John DeMartini. And he has his website, and I've made reference to an article called What Are Values? And I wanted to just share a little bit about that with you, because from a mentor's perspective, if you understand that the mentee has a hierarchy of values, when they come to the arrangement, it influences the relationships. And conversely, the mentor, you, when you come to the arrangement, it's going to help you in how you arrange the mentor-mentee connection. And therefore, if both of you understand this, then what you're able to do is then use this as a base from which to make it all even better for each other. and I'm going to read this here because I think it's important to read what he's actually written, is that your values arise from and are therefore determined by your conscious and your unconscious voids, what you perceive as most missing. So we tend to come from a place of, if there are things missing in our lives, then we direct energy towards how can I fill those voids. So what's important here is what you perceive as most missing, the void in your life, therefore becomes what you perceive as most important, what you value. So I'll give you an example. From a financial point of view, if money is not necessarily flowing in your life, you're going to put a lot of value on how do I get that money. If your relationships that you have with another person who you care deeply about is wavering a little bit, you're going to attempt to find ways in which to improve that because you don't want it as a void. You don't want it as a hindrance. There are times when you are in groups of people and you might find that there's a void, that there's no one leading the group and taking you forward. And how might you step into your leader role and be able to get things on track? So again, it's as perceived as most value is when you understand what is missing, what is the void in your life, in the situation which you find yourself. Now, here's the interesting piece from a mentor-mentee perspective. The private voids that the mentee has coming to the relationship arrangement tends to be the expression of what is the public values that they're attempting to express or gain more insight from you as a mentor. So if you're listening to what's going on, by what questions they ask you, the conversation they're having with you, usually indicates that there's something missing in the background. And that is a really great clue for you to be able to set up how you're going to mentor, how you're going to answer the questions that the mentee is going to give to you. So one of the great ways in which to think about it is, if you set up like a mannequin model in a chair and you know you're going to talk to a mentee about something, you can do some pre-work and try and find out, okay, what might be happening within that person's life? It might be happening without. Then we might be able to look at what happens between us and together as we engage in our relationship arrangement, and what might happen beyond what takes place. Because when you get into your mentor role with the mentee, there is movement of some kind that's going to take place. And it's these words here that I want to unpack a little bit more for you as a mentor. So I'm going to start with within. And I'm going to come from the mentor's perspective. From the mentor's perspective, you have things going on in your own life, just as the mentee does. And understanding what's happening when you enter into the conversation with the mentee is important. And sometimes the day may not have started off great as a mentor, and you're moving along and you're going, okay, I've got to go into my mentee connection. I better get myself up in alignment, encourage myself. And that's the interference element, is to just realign yourself so when you walk in, everything is going to be okay. Or online is that when you click on the screen and you're ready to go, you're ready to go. Which means on the flip side, the mentee also has things going on in their lives. So as the mentor, when you enter into that conversation, there are times where you may have to do a little bit of interference. You may have to just rub it a little bit, just find out what's going on so that you can go, oh, okay, I see where you're coming from today, and this is what's happening. And one of the great ways to do that at the very beginning, and I enjoy doing this one, is I ask the mentee to just fold their arms across their chest. And then I say, fold them the other way. And I get that they look down and I'm not quite sure what to do. And then eventually they get it over. And I say to them, how we come at most things is from a place of habit. It's how we fold our arms. We tend to fold our arms the same way. What I'm going to ask you to do is fold your arms the other way in our mentor-mentee relationship arrangement. And the mentees usually get that and go, oh, that's to be open. I get it. All right. Is to be ready to look at things from a different angles. And I go, yeah, that's what we're after. So from a mentor point of view, you may have to run interference with the mentee, and you got to run interference with yourself. So that as you move into the without, in other words, you are actually going to start moving towards participation, then you've got to be in a place of, as a mentor, a phrase that I'll use, it's face, fingers, feet, facing forward. So if you're having a conversation and you're not looking at the person, you're off to the side, it's very different than if you've got face on, fingers are up, feet are pointed in that direction. So from a participation point of view, is be alert to your body language and how you are participating. Conversely, what's happening for the mentee? If the mentee's looking away or is not present or working on their phone or something like that, then you're going to have to touch bases with them about that and find out how to improve that participation with you. The next piece of this is really about what happens between you. Now, I would love to say to you that every arrangement, every relationship goes the way it needs to go. No, it doesn't always work that way. And sometimes you might encounter resistance. So the mentor or the mentee, they might go, I'm not sure I believe what you just said there, dear mentor. And you're going, okay, well, let's maybe look at it from a different angle. Or what would you offer as a perspective? And let me learn from you and offer it up. So sometimes, if not, I will say 99% of the time, you will engage in some kind of resistance. Now, you don't want to get it to the point that it becomes conflict between you, but there will be a little bit of resistance because it's two unique human beings coming together to have a conversation. So be alert to that resistance. And one of the ways as a mentor to deal with the resistance is just to ask the mentee for their perspective of what you just shared, and then open it up. Because this is a good time to state that in any mentor-mentee relationship and arrangement, the mentor learns a lot from the mentee as well. So sometimes you got to get over your own resistance to what's happening as a mentor. The next one to think about is what you do together, because you came together for a reason. Now, I know that the mentee has a direction, but as the conversation gains momentum and you start to understand where you're going with this mentor-mentee connection, then what happens is that there's usually some kind of co-creation takes place, because you're going, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way, the mentee says. The mentor says, I hadn't thought about it that way either. Wow, there's something we're creating here together that can take us into maybe a better way in which to be in the workplace. If you're doing a mentoring in the workplace program, maybe it's an older person working a younger person, and they're doing youth mentoring. But on the flip side of that, sometimes a youth member might actually be mentoring the person who heads up the organization, because they'd like to get a perspective of how the youth see what's happening in the organization. So there's lots of ways in which you can co-create together. And if you seek that out as a mentor with your mentee, one of the words we enjoy using in IMC, the International Mentoring Community, is it becomes deeper and richer. And that is an important element of the mentor interacting with the mentee. The fifth part that we mentioned, and I'm just going to go over it now, is what happens beyond this, what I call eco-creation. Another way of looking at it would be, what is it that ripples out because of what it is that you've done together? Because if the mentee has got a direction, asking you questions, and you're responding as a mentor, and then they go and act on those, share those, integrate them into their lives, there is a ripple effect that goes out from the mentee. But guess what? If you're open as a mentor to that learning that we just mentioned, then there's a ripple effect that goes out. And therefore, the ripple effect that goes out because of your arrangement and your relationship, it can go out. And that can influence a lot of people just simply because of this wonderful conversation that you've had as a mentor and a mentee. So the movement that takes place because of what you do is like, if you were to look at it this way, if my left arm is the mentee and my right arm is the mentor, and we're working together like this, blue is the mentee and the green is the mentor, this sort of arrow that's there, and they're working together. There's this movement, there's this dance, and wow, we connect, and wow, we connect, and wow, we connect, and there's learning and educating that's being shared. That is what is of eco-creation. That's the ripple effect that can take place. And I've had the pleasure of that happening when I was working with some young people, and we were doing work in the leadership, and it was about how to do leadership related work in your local community that might influence what takes place in places around the world. One of the terms they use now is you're working local, but you're influencing global, and they'll use a term like glocalization now as a way of bringing it together. But our eco-creation was, they kept me on my toes as I was sharing them about insights about leadership, because they were asking questions. Okay, well, would that apply in this country because they may speak a different language? Would the concept still transfer? And I hadn't really thought of it that way. And so we were going back and forth and back and forth. And where this eventually led me to was an opportunity to go work overseas in a country that didn't speak the same language as I did. So I needed translators working with me. And I went, it was because of those young people during that time that we were exchanging that beyond conversation, that what I now call eco-creation. They helped me to be ready to deal with those situations. And I thank them for that, because I walked in like, oh, okay. I clicked in a lot quicker to what was taking place, and it made a completely different experience for me. And I actually was able to meet one of them some years later, and I thanked her for that. And she was kind of tickled that, you know, from that time that we were together and the mentoring and mentee work we're doing, how she actually helped me as well. So that was kind of a neat feeling to be able to share it back as well. This slide deck that you've just heard from is available. But before we get into that, I don't know, Doug, is there a question that someone may want to ask? Or do you have a question you wanted to ask?
So we've actually had a couple questions come in to us. And the first one is, how do I find out what my mentees' values are when they are not forthcoming?
Great question. A lot of times it's really about listening to the words that they're sharing with you. And if their language has a hindrance, then there's something of a void that's in there. But if they're overexerting, well, this is what I love to do and all that, there could be something to dig around in there, because there could be a void there as well. But if you actually truly listen to what people are sharing with you, they give you clues to what matters to them in their lives. And there is a place on drdmartini.com's website where you can actually do your values assessment. So you can find out as a mentor what is yours. And you could also weave that in, have the mentee that you work with go and take it, and then have a conversation about what you both came up with. But the key, Doug, to the answer for that one is listen to the words, and usually the extreme use of words, whether it's a hindrance or help, there's something that's going on, because you're going to find somewhere in the middle is where you want to work and understand how to be together. Great question.
So the next one sort of follows right along the same path. And if I don't know their values, Am I doomed?
No. However, you could go down some rabbit trails. You could go into some holes. You could get tripped up, and you might be going down a path and realize it wasn't really the path that you wanted to go down. So the more that you can explore what the person values, right? And one of the ways that you can do that is just ask them, what do you want to improve? What do you want to focus? What do you want to strengthen about what we're going to have a conversation about? Remember that thought bubble direction? If you ask them what it is that you want to improve, focus, or strengthen, that'll usually give you the clues enough to get you going. But pay attention again, it's the same answer as the first one, the words that people are using. And you'll usually get insights that way, and off you can go from there.
So the next one, and I'll kind of put them together. So, excuse me, with the mentor arrangement, you talked about the accountability to hold space. And the same thing with the mentee, as far as the relationship is they're accountable, they hold that space. If you had to give a mentor advice as far as how to ensure success in being accountable for the arrangement, and conversely for the mentee with the being accountable for the relationship, what would that be?
Well, this is where you've got to check in every once in a while and ask each other, what are we going to keep, delete here in our arrangement, in our relationship? Is there things that we want to keep talking about, expand on? Is there things that we want to delete out? Maybe the coffee shop no longer is the place in which to hold the space, and you've gotten to a point where you need a little bit more privacy, and you want to move out of there. So you might say, let's delete the coffee shop and let's go find somewhere else to do what we want to do. Another phrasing I would use is add, alter, or delete. What do you want to add in, or what do you want to alter about what's taking place, and what might you want to delete? Again, as I mentioned. But here's an important element of this. From a mentor's point of view, more than probably the mentee, because they won't be thinking this way, but as a mentor, to hold that space, you're accountable, and to assist the mentee, is think about it from a formative evaluation. How do I check in with how we're forming, why we're forming, who's forming our connection, our relationship, our arrangement, our structure? And check in maybe every 4 to 5 connections and see what happens from that perspective, all right? But I think what underlines this question, I think this is the important part, is it's important to do some form of evaluation, some form of review to be able to improve, focus, and strengthen what's going on.
Okay. And those were the questions that we had from some of our folks listening in.
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much. Appreciate that. Again, great questions. And the beauty of what we do with the International Mentoring Community is that we've identified 68 action outcomes that make up a profile called the Certificate of Competence Mentor. And we are creating educational resources to go with those 68 action outcomes. And the questions that just came in are connected to those action outcomes, because those are the things that people keep asking. That's what you need to gain an understanding about. And therefore, I would certainly encourage you, if you're listening and you're not involved in the International Mentoring Community from a Certificate of Competence Mentor perspective, I encourage you to get involved and see how we might be able to help you out. And there is a self-assessment that you can do just to get your a head start. And that's the second one here, wealthmovement.com/mentor. And you can find the button Get Going. If you're just looking at getting involved with the International Mentoring Community, then it's wealthmovement.com/mentor-schools. And this course, or the courses about mentoring, are available through wealthmovement.com Wholeversity, which is the Learning and Education Center. And we have the Achievement course up there for mentoring, the Competence course up for mentoring, and we're adding other courses like how to use a logbook, the simplified and advanced way of doing things. Those are all going to be added into Wholeversity for you. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, and we certainly invite you to get involved with us. So with that, I think that what we'll do is we'll say thanks very much and best wishes to you, and look forward to interacting with you in the international mentoring community. And I also encourage those of you who are mentoring now to be the best for the world, and take care.